ni ai ni ta no du te o ti linh tu shi ning noi gầu mong ni chi bo ba lo bia hai cho ti linh tu tu mi mai gầu mua cho kê tu xa e kia mua sau kia lo ua y mi đại đâu cha.
In a world dominated by digital screens and instant gratification, there's an increasing divide in our human connections and difficulties expressing our vulnerabilities. Letters to My Podcast explores the tapestries of storytelling by transforming written letters into spoken word. I have the honor of interviewing courageous guests as they dedicate their letters to a loved one, showcasing their vulnerability through their past experience, reflecting on challenges and lessons learned, present realities, exploring current identities, struggles, and passion, future aspirations, sharing their hopes, goals, and dreams for the future. Lastly, and most important, is wisdom sharing, imparting their wisdom, their advice, and inspiration to the next generation. Some of you who may not be Hmong may be wondering, what is a Tu and why Mai? The names Mai and Tu are two of the most common names in the Hmong culture, similar to Muhammad, Fatima, Juan, and Maria. Tu is a wordplay to two. Mai is a wordplay to Mai. Hence, the guest dedicates a letter to my daughter, son, partner, or whoever. Hello, 안녕하세요. My name is Sai. I'm your podcast host with the Letters to My Podcast. Welcome, where I get the privilege to capture, reflect, and share stories. I love what I do as a social worker. I'm proud to be Hmong. We are a small and mighty ethnic group from Southeast Asia. Get ready for the guest to Sa Sol, which translates in our language to send message. Again, Sa Sol, to send message by the way of letters that speak and stories that heal. Here's our next guest. Enjoy, vulnerable listener. Bye. Welcome everyone, Letters to My listeners. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Seng Xiong, and I wanted to introduce him to you all and read a little bit of his bio and talk to you kind of why I wanted Seng on this podcast. Seng Xiong, they, she, he, is a queer second-generation Hmong American community and arts advocate that resides in St. Paul, Minnesota. Over the last several years, they have committed to serve in the facilitation of healing and social awareness through anti-oppressive, holistic wellness, and trauma-informed practices. Seng is dedicated to operating a framework of decolonization that celebrates authenticity and joy, along with the remembrance of our ancestral wisdom. They have led trainings around LGBT competency, communal healing, and meaningful relationship building, which has included Trans Equity Summit through the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, community healing circles to local counties, and speaking engagement with students of color who are in K-12 and higher educations in the Twin Cities, Minnesota. Currently, Seng is pursuing his Master of Social Work to become a licensed therapist with a focus on LGBTQ care, family system, cultural identity, sexual health, and most important, liberation. And I want to tell you all a little bit why I kind of want to Seng on here. Seng, thank you again for joining us. Seng, can you just say your name a little bit, just so they can hear you?
Yeah, my name is Seng Xiong. I am from the Twin Cities. I'm really happy to be here, so thank you so much, Sai.
Yeah, welcome. We're happy to have you here with us. So just the listeners, part of the reason why I want to Seng on this podcast is Seng, because I saw you doing some drag shows, or you were just being open and just showing your beauty and so forth. So I think I was inspired by that because I'm big on vulnerabilities. I'm also big on doing something that is, whether it's considered taboo or whether it's not the norm in our culture. You're just being your full self. So that's part of the reason. Another part is that Seng is a family member of mine. My brother-in-law, who's married to my sister, that's Seng's brother. So we are family through connection, and we actually haven't had a lot of conversation. So this is the part where I want to have everyone learn about Seng's letter today that he's dedicating to, and also for Seng to share some of his wisdom. Seng, can you start out by kind of telling us who you dedicated this letter to and why?
Yeah, so I thought to write a letter, a love letter really, to Hmong queer and trans siblings, and furthermore, a chosen family of mine. I think it's super important to celebrate and to make space for this part of our community, for myself included, in that. I think being is that we have a lot in our community that struggle when it comes to homophobia, transphobia. And I think to also our families who are not part of the LGBTQ community, to model and demonstrate how is it to love on LGBTQ members of our community and families, because there are people who are supportive, but they're figuring it out. They're trying to learn, and they're part of the transition to learn what is it to love on one another as Hmong people, as community, as people who have lived through histories and series of violence and persecution. So this letter, I wanted to dedicate it to Hmong queer and trans people and siblings.
Thank you. And then before we jump into the letter, saying wisdom sharing is also education. Can you tell us a little bit more about what pronouns are and why it's being used? And secondly, break down LGBTQ plus, please.
Well, LGBTQ plus is an umbrella term for people who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, etc. There is a plethora of people who are outside of just ideas of heterosexuality,
Right.
cisgender, which also means you identify with the gender you assigned with at birth. So male, man, female, woman. And so from there, pronouns are a helpful way to identify and help people self-affirm themselves in the gender identity they see themselves fit through third person words such as he, him, his, she, her. For non-binary or gender-neutral terms, they, them, theirs. And there's several others that I think in the English language, at least, people create to identify themselves with. In Hmong, we also have nu, which is also a gender-neutral term when we look to identify someone in Hmong too. So that's something really cool about our language that is really expansive in that kind of way, just having to reframe it as such.
Yeah, actually, I did not know that. Nu is non-gender conforming.
I
That's
think
really cool.
you spell it as NWS.
Wow. Kutu nu, like that. Oh, thanks for teaching us something new. So we have to all use that. Thank you, Seng. We would love to hear your letter. Would you like to read it for us? And then those listeners who are going to be listening, you can see it. We'll post this online too as well.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and read my letter that I wrote. This took me some time to write because I really wanted to be thoughtful. And so I hope this does justice to people who come across it.
I'm sure it will. Thank you.
So, to my beloved Hmong queer and trans siblings and furthermore chosen family, I dedicate this letter to you for helping me to remember my being and reason here in this lifetime. It is because of the love from this part of my community that I get to be fully myself in all my glory. The courage I get from each of you reckoning your power and who you are has given way for me to have endless possibilities about what I am capable of and a deep remembrance of that. My inner child rejoices every time we get to commune as people who have chosen each other as family because of the ways we see each other. My past realities. Growing up, I knew how to hide who I was very well because of the ways I was made to believe that I was not okay as I am. This came from abuse and trauma within my family that stems from the long histories of violence we have endured. From it, my young self felt pushed out, betrayed, unloved by those in my family and community. It is one of the most painful things to have a truth inside of you and not being able to share it, and even more so, a beauty for no one to recognize it. The person I am today is one I needed back then. I now make it a priority to breathe life and love into the child in me, who was made to feel less than, and I hold close onto my village I have found that sees and respects me for who I am as we do for each other. Self-love, compounded by communal care, has been the disrupting point of not feeling valued in this world, being that in relationships, we come across our traumas. It will also be in relationships that we find our healing. My present realities. Sometimes there are pressures to have to disclose who you are to people as an LGBTQ person. The idea of coming out is a weighted event that can feel so highly staked and foregoing of our power in the hopes of being accepted into the eyes of cis hetero people, which, by the way, is an ever ongoing process if you let it. Rather, my hope is that we as Hmong LGBTQ people can take on space to invite in people we choose to be part of our lives and enact the autonomy that gives us my hope is that we as Hmong LGBTQ people can take on space to invite in people we choose to be part of our lives and enact the autonomy that gives us centrality to our stories as we see fit and within our safety. For me, I understand the value I have, and so it is an honor to share space with myself in the company of those that attest and embody that very quality, dignity in our humanity. Whatever your journey is to figuring out these parts of coming into your own as a person, just know that your timing is meant for you and never too late to know that you're worth it. My future aspiration. As I move forth in finding more so who I am and the gifts that I share, I want to leave you with this. Remember where you come from and those that have paved the way. Our paths are never alone because we have been shaped by someone else's sacrifice to allow us the chance to actually make better of our circumstances. It gives me a great deal of gratitude to know that there are ancestors and people, even those who do not even know of me, that felt compelled to want to make a better world so that I could experience a sort of love they transferred onto it through their will and might. In that framework, I know that it is my calling to continue carving out space and joy so that the next generation of Hmong, queer, and trans kids know that they were loved and thought of. If and when you get there, try it out for yourselves too. I wish to share this wisdom with you. I love being Hmong, queer, non-binary, so much more as it is my birthright. It may have taken me a while, but I now certainly know these facets of being. Each of us have our own lights that are precious, for it can transcend timelines and adversity of our.
Writing this letter and now reading it, what kind of experience did that give you?
You know, this letter was very cathartic to write. I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and really write a letter of gratitude and just expression of life as I have gone through it in the past year. I think because I've entered school, and school can sometimes kill the joy of writing as academia can do so. But writing it allowed me to just reflect about the journey I've been on a little bit to become the person I am today. Revisit memories, people that have shaped me, and really give thanks to all of that. The struggles, the successes, the love, and the community that has been cultivated around me. And so it was fitting to have to dedicate it then to my queer and trans Hmong siblings, chosen family. Just being that it is such a unique experience. It's a magical experience as I write. And one thing about magic is that just because it is magical, it doesn't also mean it's real. We're human beings. We have so much of our humanity that makes up the trials, the tribulations, and also the triumphs of who we are. And so it was really a chance to just offer gratitude and appreciation for this journey thus far and the people that have made up of it for me. So it was a lovely experience.
Yeah, I'm happy you did it. I think one of the biggest things for me in terms of writing, the words I always think about is reflections, reminders, and gets you back on track, because as you're writing, you're reflecting on these things in your life that shaped you, helped you who you were. This is like part of the purpose of this podcast is for us to reflect and share stories. So great job, Seng.
Thank you.
Cool. So we're going to break down a little bit more. I'm going to ask Seng some more questions about his experience. So Seng, for you, you talked about your experiences with coming out and your experience with gender, with sexual orientation. Can you tell us more about how your past experience kind of shaped you who you were today, or your struggles, so forth, that you feel that's important to share with our listeners?
I think for my journey, what was so closely intertwined was culture and gender and sexuality. That I grew up so I'm from Brooklyn Park in Minnesota, and the area that I grew up in, there wasn't that many Hmong families, and I just didn't see much representation of that. And at a young age too, I knew I was just different in the ways that my gender and my sexuality, I knew I was not straight, just by no means. I knew that, but I think what I would learn as a child was that it was not a time that was accepted. And from that, I would be met with, beratement, abuse, just things that let me know that was not okay. And so when I write that I learned really young how to hide myself very well, it's the mask of putting on, how to be someone being raised as the Hmong boy into a Hmong man, someone who just is not connected to Hmong community because I didn't see much of that around me. And, when I got into school too, that's where I learned a lot of English, that all the Hmong that my paternal grandma, my ba, tried to taught and instill into me while my parents worked full-time jobs trying to support our family, because we came from a working class background. I was indoctrinated. I was really influenced just to learn English and forget a lot of the beauty, the complexity about what our Hmong language and culture has. And so much of growing up, there was just missing awareness and consciousness about what it means to be authentic and to be myself, because that was not nurtured or supported. And so when I got to college, kind of independent from family, kind of going into a world where I have to practice autonomy and make choices on my own, I started to then reconnect and be really challenged about these questions about who am I? What do I really care about? What are my values? And I found that so much of these questions brought me back to what it means to be Hmong, what it means to be queer, and essentially what it means to be free. Because I think that's the thread that connects all these things for me. And I know that for a lot of people, there's sometimes this tug to feel like you have to choose between being Hmong or LGBTQ if that is part of your reality and truth.
Yeah, we don't live in life in absolutes. That's a frustrating thing. But yeah, sorry. Keep going.
No. I think it's so true. There's a lack of nuance because we are in an age where it's hard to really reckon with people's humanity, to see people's humanities and to value the fullness of people, who they are. And so at the age of 19, I made the decision to take back who I am.
Yeah, there you go.
And I kind of, even though I didn't grow up in a shaman family, I felt like I did performed a really necessary ceremony of a soul calling to get back who I am, hopefully, if you want, so that I could heal. I could really be in tune with who I am and my purpose of why I'm here in this world. And part of that is knowing that it is a really wonderful gift to be Hmong, LGBTQ, queer, non-binary. So that's a bit about my experience with that.
Yeah, it's I think that's powerful too. And for the listeners, I want to share experiences from a cisgender Hmong man, me as well, and growing up around LGBTQ individuals. Like even for me, I was taught that it's wrong. I was taught that you shared marry Hmong. I was taught that if two men are holding hands or two women are kissing or vice versa, that you should be shunned. And it wasn't until undergraduate, I was in a social justice minor and learning about LGBTQ, learning about how the Native Americans have had, oh my God, Sing, what's it called? Third Spirit? Oh my God.
Two-spirit.
Two-Spirit, thank you.
Two-spirit.
And thank you. And learning about the Native Americans have had this in the history of individuals who are LGBTQ, and they call them two spirits. So this has been going on for as long as human civilization had been around. It's, at the end of the day, the frustrating thing for me as a straight cisgender male is just like, all this is a human construct. Like, people created all these things, and it has caused death, suicide, addiction, and so forth. As a social worker, that's all I've seen, and it's frustrating. The difference is when your family supports you, changes the whole complexity of everything. Sorry, that's my rant, but say.
It's true. I think that's why it's so important to speak about it, because there's a lot of families that struggle about what is LGBTQ, and even in our language of Hmong, there is no words, oftentimes no words to describe gay,
Right.
transgender. It's really to put words together just to describe that kind of experience.
Right.
And even if there are identifying words, they're often with negative connotations that spread stigma about what it means to be queer and trans. And so when we get platforms like this, I think it's super, super important to raise awareness and education about it. I think because ultimately it's about our healing as people. When I speak about, we have been through histories of violence, of imperialism, of colonization that has led us to at least this land here in the United States. Those make up the reasons why we are able to cause more hurt and violence onto each other, because that is the kind of cycles that we know and live. And so these are the chances we get to break those cycles, to heal together, and to learn what it means to love each other as Hmong people.
Absolutely. Those are very powerful. Sing, you touched base on your experience of coming out and just motivating and so forth. I want to get a little bit more deeper dive into you personally. 2 questions I'm going to ask you is, I know you talked about your coming out, you talked about your struggles, and you talked about why it's important to come out, how you reclaimed your power. But I think the listener could benefit from hearing more about what broke you. Like what broke you when you were younger that kind of helped molded you. So 2-part question, sorry.
Yeah, for me, like to reframe this question for, I think that speaks, the piece I was speaking about earlier, that when I was really having to ask these questions about who am I, what do I value, it was a point of reclamation and rebirthing of who I am. I think when you grow up here in America, and in the ways that school systems teach you about American history, that leaves out so much of the violence that has been a part of the fabric of this society's history, and how there was an erasure of our part in the history of how we were involved in a war we had no place in originally, in the Vietnam War, leading to our displacement as Hmong people, to the genocide known as the Secret War for us as Hmong people back in the 1970s, throughout the 1980s. There was just so much lack of information about truth, lack of support about different possibilities and what different models of what it means to be a person, especially a person who is queer, who is openly queer and trans, gender not conforming, etc. And when I go back into my story, I appreciate I've had people in my family specifically who were some of the first people to just reclaim and just profess their humanity as queer people, as queer Hmong people. And so those models for me allowed me to feel more emboldened and courageous to share that with people in my life. And that's the part of, I think, the idea of inviting in people versus coming out is really, really brought to life, because coming out is it is, I think, an experience for people who consume the person who feels like they have to be made known as a queer trans person. It is not holding central to the person that is, feeling that there is a lot being staked upon, just to tell people who they love, who they are having to question if they will be loved after this disclosure. And so when we think about inviting in people, it gives us power back that, yes, we get to be the main characters of our lives. We get to choose people who care about us, who love us. And that in that sense, there's no discarding of us as our people, as people who have tapped into our humanity in that way. So it means so much. I think when I think about that age of 19, when I was having to have real critical questions and real breakdowns of who I am, and really essentially just have to erase everything that I was fed as lies in regards
Right.
to what it means to be Hmong, what it means to be straight, what it means to be queer, sifting through all of that and getting to just claim my own humanity and inviting people who see and respect that. And I think since then, when you, at least I'll speak for myself, when I have really leaned into that, the truth of who I am, be it is hard, it is not an easy journey. And I think a lot of people who are a part of this experience can really relate to that. And even people who just understand what it means to be authentic to themselves. It is a fight, but also it is a demonstration of how to love yourself and how you teach people to love you. And I think in that way, people come along, people learn to come along, and we shift the narratives of violence that have been a part of our history in undoing those long cycles and create the ripples of what it means to heal together collectively and also in our own lives.
Thank you for sharing that. Saying, I want to get more vulnerable with you. I'm curious about your moments of struggle when you were coming out. Yes, you had support. Yes, you had other people, but this is more about you. How did you process that? And how did that help you, I guess, reclaim your power, like you said?
I just had to wipe everything that I was fed that I knew was not the truth of who I am. You know, growing up, again, there's not much representation of in mass media, in my family, in the community I was surrounded with. I grew up again with communities that were communities of color. I grew up with a lot of Black and Brown, Southeast Asian, Indigenous and Native American communities, but there was little Hmong families that I got to be around with. And so when I got into the school system, there was just less representation of what it means to be Hmong. And so being that also I grew up in a family that there was just a lot of internalized and there was a lot of homophobia, transphobia. I was fed so much negative images and messages about all these things that kind of create this sense of self-hate around these pieces about culture, gender, and sexual identity for myself. When I learned about some of my trauma responses and the ways that I've survived throughout those instances of ostracization and violence, it is to appease people. It is to freeze in place and make sure that I am not giving a sense of weakness or vulnerability.
L-O-O.
Yeah. Because it's survival. When people smell your vulnerability that don't have the best intentions or don't have the tools to know how to take care of you, that is a point for, for a violation, for you to be violated. So, yeah, at 19, I didn't always go by this name Seng, and I wondered why at that time and place in my life.
Yeah, why is that?
It's all those points about self-hatred, all those ideas about distancing myself from being Hmong, from being queer. And so when I thought about what mattered most to me and those components of being Hmong, queer, being free, ultimately, Seng felt like a place, like a home coming back to me. And that's why I felt like I had to conduct or do my own sort of soul calling or hupli so that, yeah, my soul comes back home to me and I start the journey of healing, of learning what is most authentic, what is most sincere about who I am and what I want to offer to the world and people around me. And yeah, it's a lot of getting through mental health issues, of going through, trauma is prevalent in our community, what trauma is prevalent in my family, and what sort of ideas of normal that I had to consume as a child to survive that I, as an adult, have to undo and unlearn so that I can best be the version that I want to be of myself and also pass on to the future generations to come, because there are plenty of more Sengs that are on the rise.
That's
and
right.
I want them to know that there's love, is people here. There are people who see them, who are like them. And we've always been here. Just
right.
because our history doesn't say so sometimes. In the mainstream.
Well, who wrote those history books?
Right.
Heterosexual straight people.
Yeah. And even in sometimes our own curation of Hmong history, patriarchy excludes Hmong women, Hmong LGBTQ people. And instead of waiting to be invited to the table to be written into history, we're at a point where we'll write ourselves in, that we will make room and a table for us to sit at.
Well, and just share with the listeners, I think I struggle with the Hmong conformity aspects of it too as well in our culture, because it's very similar to black and white. And if you don't fit in, that's where self-hatred comes in. That's where anxiety, depression, low self-esteem comes in. So there's beauty to our culture in terms of bringing the communities together and having our amazing New Year's and being so tight-knit. But it's always a balance. I just compare it to democracy. Democracy is great, but when the rich people have too much power into it, it erodes our system. So I just think hate, dislike, pain, suffering, and discrimination really negatively affects our community. And then Seng, I love it that you at the age of 19, you went back to Seng. I think for me, I went by David for until 30, 31. Yeah. And then it's not my legal name. Childhood, they did call me Davy, but I think it was after the George Floyd when I realized that I was curtailing my name so white people could pronounce it better. So and so I feel you in that, and this is just reclaiming my name. Sai is a wonderful and beautiful name. It took me a long time in therapy to accept that, but it is. So, so saying our past experiences is the paths that help shapes us who we are today, and I want to move us towards your present realities. You can talk about, first of all, I want Singh to talk about his identity. Who is his identity? He did talk about it, but I want him to make it more clear. And what do those identities mean to you, and why are they important?
Yeah, of course, I'm always claiming being Hmong. I love being Hmong, Hmong American in this life. But Hmong, queer, non-binary. Non-binary means I don't identify or see my experience in terms of gender in the space of man or woman. My gender identity is in this kind of gray area that doesn't exist in either of those experiences. And also, I think one of the identities that I've had to learn to come into, especially as a young adult, well, I'm 30 now, so I can't claim being young adult no more, but in my adulthood,
Right.
as being a facilitator of healing, I started off this journey of healing as a massage therapist because it felt like I was reconnecting with some cultural practices that we have used long before Western medicine was introduced to us to take care of ourselves and our communities. And that was massage or body work and the science of it. And when I knew I have some intuition without any formal training, I wanted to do that for my family, for my people in my life that experience chronic pain, experience aches from having to work excessively in a capitalistic society, and also just get the opportunity to be just treated and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And I tapped into that form of healing. Before then, I found advocacy for my professional experiences that I've done in the past several years as a community advocate. I worked at a Hmong gender-based violence agency that advocated for survivors of domestic and intimate partner violence and people who have gone through also homophobia and transphobia, specifically within Hmong and Southeast Asian communities. And so I dedicated a lot of my time, especially in the past several years in this pandemic, to advocate, and to provide spaces of healing and connection for people to find each other. Because I think so much about violence and oppression is that it is an isolating experience. It is supposed to be an experience that is shameful, that makes you not want to connect with people about it, that makes you feel like you're all alone and dealing with some of life's most harshest conditions.
And I just want to add, this is what I tell my clients and other people, whether it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, whatever, it is an individual experience, but not a singular experience.
Yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. And I think we have so much to do as people and in our own inner work to really destigmatize and unravel the shame about these things, because it's not going to bring us closer to relieving these pains. It's not going to bring us closer to getting out of these kind of cycles of violence. And what those spaces meant for me as someone who wants to conduct healing is that, again, when I think about people who have sacrificed as part of my ancestral line, as part of people who have fought for civil causes, for equity, for humanity, there it was an idea to bring in people they may have not known, into a world that was better than the one that they were in currently. And so I have babies in my family that I hope that they don't have to go through things that my generation has gone through when it comes to traumatic things. And they'll have their own set of trials and challenges, but at least there's hopefully more tools. There's more blueprints about how we go and manage those things. There's more support systems. And there's really just more models of possibility to know that they're loved and thought of, and that people, we have long been thinking about them to make way for this.
Yeah. I think it's powerful because, healing is powerful, and standing on the shoulders of the paths that were created on the shoulders of the individuals. Like, one of my big examples is the Black Panther Party. They started a school lunch program in like the 50s or 60s, and look at what we have now. Look at the impact, and that's the impact that you want to give individuals who are Hmong struggling with identity to LGBTQ. So, it's powerful. Seng, I want to ask you a question regarding grief. Can you tell me your experience with grief, loss, and the challenges that you experienced, and how did you heal?
I think grief has been one of the most important parts of my healing journey, because it is just a natural part of life. There's so much loss we go through, so much loss that I have gone through and will go through, continue to go through. When I think about how it relates to this journey that I'm sharing today, is that, when I had to shed all these ideas about who I am and what I've learned, what life was at 19, it was a huge loss about my sense of self. That was the mask, but it served a purpose for me to survive. Had a huge loss with community and family that I grew up with that just no longer aligned with that part of my truth, whether it was because they couldn't accept it or they just didn't know how to hold that. And I was in a place where I couldn't handle people who are figuring it out, even if they had the best of intentions. And so grief was a huge part of that journey that devastated me at the time. And I think severely flared up things that were chronic of mine when it comes to mental health, such as depression and anxiety. When I made that decision to kind of like reclaim my name, reclaim my queerness, I was in my second year of college and I had to drop out because I was breaking down. I know, trying to handle academics, identity, family, just a lot of pressure.
It was.
And I think one of the things that is really important about grief is that it is not a bad emotion. It is not a bad experience. It is a part of life. And I think it teaches you about what care means and how important it is to offer that to yourself. And to curate a system of care around you so that, it can become alchemized. Grief can lead you to opportunities to reform or rebirth who you are, rebirth the systems around you that love on you, that care about you, and resurface your purpose. I think that's what grief can do. And what we just have to be able to do is create the container to hold grief, expand it without shame and without shaming others about their own griefs, and know that it is natural and that it really does take a village. I would not have gotten through that moment of my life without people who really cared about me, who saw me, and especially with getting to meet other queer Hmong people. I think that was a time in my life where I was really seeking out that part of community. And I found an organization that no longer exists, but at the time was called Shades of Yellow, that consisted of people who were organizing around Hmong LGBTQ community, really intentional about trying to reach out to people here in the Twin Cities that are Hmong LGBTQ to know that we got you, we're here, there is resources, there is support, and people doing groundbreaking work to pave cultural space about what it means to be Hmong and LGBTQ. And so even though that is no longer an organization that is active today, that is the legacy that I get to be a part of and ride so that we can bring in more people to know who are also in their own process of grieving and of loss, that they're seeing and that there is care resources out here for you.
Thank you for sharing that. When there's grief, there's a loss of connection, there's a loss of relationship. And then saying you chose to let go or to process, to heal from the past identities that you were, and you're choosing it to now. And I think that's very powerful, saying that you have done that. I'm not sure if you want to comment on that at all, but focus on the relational aspects of it and how you can help other people process this experience too.
Yeah, I think just like how I wrote in my letter, that sometimes it is relationships that create or, make our traumas occur in our lives, but it is also in relationships that we'll find healing and opportunities for growth. And I think that's part of, what it means to be a human being, that we're social creatures. And especially as Hmong people, really collective and community-oriented people, where in instances of crisis, of grief, we have called on our family, our kin to be surrounding us so that we can be healed. We call shamans, we call family members to help us help the operation about the ceremony. We have people just call our spirits back when we can't do it ourselves. There's so much community in that. And I think when we think about the history, about the violence we have endured as a people, it is meant to make us feel like we are not worthy, that we are not able to have community, because there are forces that are just would rather us not exist here, would rather not take resources, would not, take space.
Yeah.
To be seen and champions of our own stories. And so these are the things that when we think about collective care, it is a form of resistance, but more so it is a form of collectivity that we know has been a part of our survival and means to survive or to live joyfully, to again transmute that grief into something that will become powerful, become beautiful.
Right.
And so I just think that grief, there's so much that it does as it's natural, it's a part of life. And when we get to understand how to be with it, how to share that with people, really powerful and amazing things happen and changes the trajectory about how we can be as a people.
Absolutely. And then I just wanted to read for the listener what one of the definition of grief is, right? So grief can be described as a process of experiencing psychological, which is in the brain, behavioral, social, or physical reaction to possession or loss. A grief does not have to be a death of someone. Grief could be, like Seng said, the death of an identity. Grief can be loss of a home due to natural disaster. So thank you so much for sharing that, Seng.
Mm-hmm.
And transition to the next topic. I'm sure some of the listeners are in school right now and either starting the new year, ready to get done in May. Saying, can you kind of tell us about your reasons why you want to go to school? and give any advice or any struggles. So if we really want to focus on struggles and vulnerabilities and also talk about money.
Yeah, I can start with my undergraduate experience, where I think my entry into that part of my pursuit of higher ed, was the messaging that I think so many Hmong kids and Asian kids can relate, is that your parents expect greatness, expect high grades of you.
Wait, hold on.
What is it?
Say it in their words.
Oh, no, just like, you go to school, you better get
Right.
A's.
Right.
You better become a doctor, a lawyer, something that brings money, something that just solidifies stability, economic success.
And that's it. You can't be anyone else.
Yeah. And so those were the pressures that I also faced, and was right from high school jumping into my undergraduate program. Although I didn't have no idea what I wanted to do, I was just going because it was something that was expected of me. And when I was breaking the sort of matrix of everything and having to question everything, I dropped out for a little bit, for a full year. I went back to finish my undergraduate with a business degree. And that decision was still it felt like obligation, albeit I made some more intentional choices about how I would do it.
Yeah. You were living their life, not yours,
Exactly.
it feels like.
Yeah. And I was still in limbo when I graduated from my undergraduate experience, because I didn't know what job I was going to do. I didn't know what to do with the business degree. It wasn't something that aligned with me. And so coming back this time around, pursuing my master's in social work, specifically to become a licensed therapist in the future, through the life experiences and the work experiences I garnered over the past several years, stemming from my undergrad experience, it really allowed me to find who I am more so, and how that informed what I want to do professionally. And for me, part of my profession was something to be of service to people. When I thought about what acquiring a degree as a master's social work professional, it would allow me, I think, more tools and ability to serve my community the way that I wanted to. And so those were, I think, the things that made it different this time coming back, that I had more autonomy, I had more purpose, more understanding about the things I was studying because of the things that I have lived through, the things that I have done professionally as a community advocate, as a direct service provider in this field of work. And the finances of it, I understand the weight that comes with all the loans, all the debt, and making sure that, I think, to reorient that frame, that this was going to be an investment. In my undergrad, I didn't have the semblance of understanding about money that I do now. And that's how I racked up so much debt in my undergrad experience, and figuring out, how am I going to pay this off? I'm still paying it off, and I'm still going to be paying off after my master's.
Sounds welcome to the club.
Yeah. But it is an investment, and you have to understand that.
Right.
And also have to, be smart about the way that you're spending money. It is a struggle financially. This was one of the most biggest surprises going back to my master's, was the financial sacrifice, having to quit my full time, having to dedicate time in my field practicum learnings that may or may not be paid, but was not financially feasible to live, in the housing that I have, to pay the bills that I have, to feed people and my pet that I have. Like, there has to be, I think, planning, has to be intention about your finances as well. And that may also include, again, that system of care of people who can help you with that, help plan that with you. But yeah, money, I think it is important, because a lot of us come from families that don't have generational wealth. We're trying to build that. And so in part, this is how we do that. It's an investment, and we have to be smart about where our money is going to.
Well, I think this is like the journey of you exploring yourself, just similar to life, you're exploring the things. So what you did is you align your values and your life experiences with your profession, with your school, and that's align your profession. And social work, saying, is a wonderful field. Like, for me, I'm a proud social worker. of over 13 years, but I'm also very critical about our field. Like you said, we don't pay ourselves for our interns. It's basically free labor, so I'm hopeful for social work can get paid more, and that's one of my gripes about social work. But I do love the ability to help and, like you said, be of service to others. The ability to just help and heal and just be with them is very important. And for future social workers, is something called public student loan forgiveness. You work 10 years in the field in nonprofit or as a social worker, your loans will be forgiven. So again, public student loan forgiveness. Seng, let's transition to the next two. Okay, thank you so much for sharing about your experience about school. Saying school is going to help you transition to your future. So let's talk about your future aspirations. And again, just so the guest knows, these are where Seng would talk about his wants, his desire, what he yearns for, what he's aiming for. So Seng, let's explore your hopes. Kind of do like a little map. What are your hopes right now?
Yeah, in light of this time that I had with you, I want to continue paving resources and space for Hmong LGBTQ people to commune and to really explore the intersections of their life experiences, and so that they can be more in tune and connected with who they are and with their community, with what it means to be, Hmong and LGBTQ.
That's right.
This is a really beautiful experience, and it's a hard one as well. And so when I pursue my master's in social work, the hope for becoming a graduate of this program is to get my license in therapy and to provide not only just direct service around mental health and holistic wellness for people in my community, that also just includes the full Hmong community, but it's also about hoping to enact change and change and shift some cultural notions that we have as it relates to the sort of violence we enact on each other, the perpetuations of patriarchy, of internalized racism, of classism, and also even, I think, destigmatize sometimes the practices around shamanism. I think, as our people had been introduced into Christianity way back into when we were only in existence or when we resided in Laos, we had missionaries come in to offer us some resources that met our basic needs in exchange for following the church, for following, this idea of Christianity. In some ways, throughout that process, shamanism has felt like something that was of something evil, demonic. And so I hope to also create ways that we can advocate about how we create equity, so that, outside of the direct service work where you're having to meet people's crisis and kind of support people in that way, also change what are the root conditions that are making people feel like they have to, seek out these services, which are crucial and critical. And we also have to think about what are the systems behind that contribute to the violence, where people feel like that they're not cared for, that they're not supported, that they're not enough, essentially. My other hope is artistically, I think artists are such a powerful and an amazing tool to be a vehicle for change. I would love to continue to support Hmong LGBTQ artists. The past couple of years, I've gotten to really foster and support Hmong drag artists about what they're doing to infuse culture into this really queer art form. I think where I got to meet you. Yeah.
Wait, before you go on there, can you tell people what a drag show is?
Yeah, a drag performer is someone that dons on a persona that may align with a different gender than what they are assigned with, to artistically showcase a message that expresses freedom, that expresses something that is meaningful to their drag craft. So a drag show is often conventionally known as where you get to see someone perform, dance, you tip them, and you celebrate just the queer art form that they are contributing.
And I think for me, my first time going to drag show, how old? I was probably like 21. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, when I went there, I was in college. Like, wait, what is this? This is so weird. Where's the woman? Right in my head, like that was that natural thought process in my head. It just shows how deeply embedded how heterosexual society places in our head. So it took like a while to just like process that. But at the end of the day, it's just fun as going anyway. It was one of my best shows. They had fun. It was burlesque themed as well. I know it was the best. It was at a place in Northeast Minneapolis. I cannot remember the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was amazing and fun. And anyone who has not been to a drag show, go. I live in New York City, so I get the benefits of going to a lot of drag shows. So, saying you talked about. I'm sorry.
Wait, can I share something real quick? You know, my first exposure to drag was actually at Hmong New Year's when I was a kid.
What? How? And where?
You know, I think this was, I don't know if this was still happening at the River Center, but I was a kid. I don't remember
what year. Yeah.
This was when I was like 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
So this is years back.
That's right.
At the Hmong New Year, I saw just some of the two majestic, larger than life forces dressed in like Hmong feminine clothing.
Beautiful.
And they were so beautiful, muscular. My perception as a kid, I saw them that they kind of resemble someone like me, that they looked like they were people that were assigned male at birth, but they decided to go to Hmong New Year and these like beautiful Hmong gowns, you know, all the coins, the headpieces, the jewelry, the dress, the skirt, all of it. And it was like seeing two drag sisters just love on each other and show love for their community at the Hmong New Year. And that was a moment where a light bulb clicked for me. Like,
right?
I see myself in them.
I know.
And that was my first, I think, exposure to like drag or just people who were gender bending, essentially. Just going out of the norm.
And who gave no fucks, which I loved.
It was amazing. I will get that.
Yeah, no. I think for me, it's just like I went to St. Xiong State, and for the listeners, this is the first episode, Dr. Dia Cha. She was the first Hmong woman to have her undergraduate degree in America, first Hmong woman to have her master's degree, and second Hmong woman to have her PhD. And she's a professor of anthropology. And I went to St. Xiong State in 2007. And like Seng said, we are around a community that doesn't look like us. So going to a school that's about an hour and a half away from the Twin Cities and seeing a Hmong professor was awe-inspiring because it showed like, oh, wait, we can get here. Oh, wait, we can be respected. Oh, wait, we can do these things and make impact. So I'm happy that you had that at the age of 7 because saying this is the purpose of this podcast is for us to pave the way or to give us a platform to show that we are paving the way for the next generation. And I'm hopeful for those individuals who are struggling with, I'm not sure the right term. Is it coming out or struggling with identity? What's the right way?
I'm just struggling with identity.
For those individuals who are struggling with their identity, this is listen to Seng's story. Listen to the mini stories that we're going to have on this. Seng, I cut you off when you were talking about that's why I met Sai. I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Oh, yeah. The other avenues of art is fashion. I met you at a fashion show that I was doing in New York. And this was last year.
Yes. Okay. Talk about it. Yes.
I was featured alongside an amazing cast and team of designers at Asian Fashion Week, showcasing Hmong indigenous clothing that were also created back in Vietnam and Thailand and Laos. And so I wanted to continue to uplift the materials, the design that are inherent to our art, our craft as Hmong people, such as batik, materials of hemp. And
wait, explain what batik is. Start again and explain what batik is.
So one of the indigenous practices for Hmong people in our art forms is batik, which is a sort of pattern design onto fabric known as hemp that we use to create the motifs, the patterns that are well known for Hmong clothing. And the dye is from, I think, indigo.
Correct.
There's also bees.
It's a dark, beautiful blue, y'all.
There's also bees, I think, sort of like beeswax or a sort of wax to create the designs, and a specific tool and technique that is like a little site that you create these designs that make up this garment, this beautiful garment or this cloth of art. And that's batik. So just continue to uplift the likes of those things that are inherent to our practices that
Because saying why is it important to maintain those practices? It's some people say it's too old, move on, or oh that's antiquated or that's antique. We gotta I guess assimilate, which I'm against to this culture.
that is so wrong
Thank you.
because
Thank
it's just a
you.
part of our history. It's part of who we are. It's part of, the nature of our storytelling as Hmong people. Storytelling is everything to us. And aside from our oral traditions, these practices, the designs, those were the things that kept the message about who we are as Hmong people alive, especially in times of persecution. They held deep meaning and messages about where we came from, who we are, what certain practices, and even forms of resistance against forces that were trying to erase us. And so keeping those alive, is important because it's about who we are as a people, where we're going to find our freedom, where we're going to find our healing. Because I'm a strong believer, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And that relates to our history. Yeah, my hope is to also continue supporting the arts, especially with Hmong LGBTQ artists, and continue to dabble in it myself. Part of that is I would love to continue archiving my family story. Me and my mom, we just got to write a story about paying homage to her paternal grandma back in Laos.
Okay.
Before their departure in the Secret War. And so it was a memory, a keepsake to really immortalize this woman in our family. I think that, in so many of our families, we forget about, all the matriarchs, all the women.
No.
I want to keep these things alive. I want to keep these people, these women alive.
Right. And saying, you just made me thought of something, because part of the reason of this podcast is like our OGs, when I say OG, our parents, it's difficult for them to talk about because they don't have what we have had, the mental health and being in America, talk about emotions and feelings. So one of the goals of this podcast, once it gets ready, is just like, we're going to do the same similar template and ask our OGs. Like, I want the kids and the nieces to start a project like this so they can ask their aunties, uncles, or grandparents about this, because you're right. I bet you we're oral culture, therefore we don't have a lot of things recorded. So we should really record all these things, because those matriarchs, I don't know my great-grandmother, I'm there with you too, or great-grandfather.
I think just speaking a bit about stories and what they mean to us as Hmong people, and also just thinking about what power it holds. Part of my mission in doing these pursuits of mine, whether it's about preserving art, whether it's about preserving our humanity, is knowing that our story didn't begin in tragedy, and our story didn't begin at war. It didn't begin in poverty, and it didn't begin in the depreciation or the view about who we are as lesser than. I think I want to shift the narrative and sometimes the scope of how some of us are led to be self-hate, are led to hate ourselves because of misconceived ideas about who we are, is that, we are beautiful. We had lives full before we became refugees, before we lived in impoverished areas of our residence, that we had joy, that we had art, we had a lot of care and community that really has gotten us through 10,000 years of persecution. And so my pursuit in these things is to know that, being Hmong, being LGBTQ, being a part of this community, it's all a beautiful experience. And I hope we get to celebrate that and explore more the nuance and the complexity about what it means to be all these things.
Absolutely. Well said. Okay. So we're going to transition to the wisdom. So we're going to move to transitioning to the part of wisdom sharing. Your letter was focused on the Hmong LGBTQ community, and I just wanted to ask you, what advice would you give someone who wants to start a similar path or who wants to learn from you, what would you tell them about skills, experiences, mindsets, and philosophy that would help them?
I would say to someone that is figuring out what their purpose is in this world, who is struggling, maybe who they are as a person, to take the time to figure those things out, to really give space and also a lot of grace to know who you are, what values you have, what is important to you in this lifetime, and what people you want to surround yourself in achieving those things. I think community is so important. Nothing in this life is something you do by yourself. Everything has been touched by a person or another person's actions, whether you believe you did something by yourself or not. And so taking the time to just know who you are so that the part about discernment is clear. What is it that you are willing and not willing to do to get to where you want to go? What is it that you need to do to get to where you want to go? I think it's so helpful when you know who you are to understand the kind of discernment you need to get to where you want to go. I should know because, when I didn't know who I was, I felt so lost in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
But when I started getting more clear about these things, it gave me a compass about, okay, I think I have a sense of where I'm moving and get the traction that I need to get there.
Saying, what if you don't have community and your family's against you? Or you don't know what to do? No one supports you. No one in your family.
Those are some of the most, I think, challenging and honestly scariest places to be, where you might have to go find it somewhere else. I don't believe that no one has nothing in this world or no one has nobody in this world. I heard this quote. I don't know where it's from, but it's something to the degree about, there are people waiting to love on you in this life. You may not have met them yet. You may not have built the relationships there yet, but there are people are willing to love on you, want to get to know you. And so I would say if it's not present, keep searching, keep holding on and having the courage to tap into who you are. And, when you are your most authentic self, it attracts people who are their most truest self as well. Light attracts light, healing attracts healing. And so you want to really exhibit what you want in return. And so taking the time to get to know who you are, that, even if you don't have an external form of community, if you don't have that yet, you're going to build that relationship with yourself first then. Build that first and foremost, because then, again, you get to tell and demonstrate to people how you want to be cared and loved on. And just know that there are people who want to do that. So I would say focus on those things and know that healing is not a linear journey. There is going to be many bumps along the roads where you feel like you did something shameful. You had a learning curve that you just felt like, I feel so late, or I feel like I'm not at the right part of my learning journey. I think our timing is on our own divine schedule. I, for a long time, felt like I was redoing a lot of things that I felt reminiscent of my puberty stage, even though I was in my 20s. I was like, why do I feel like I'm a 13-year-old or 12-year-old, like making all these mistakes as a adolescent? But it's because, sometimes we're not afforded those things when we're in our survival. We're focused on what is going to get us to the next day, the next meal, the next check. And so know that you are on your own divine timing when you have these really, really profound moments of learning and truth about who you are. It's never too late. You are going to be where you need to be at. And just know that find your village. Find the village that is going to hold you and take you through some of the most challenging points of life. I think it is so important. This is a heavy world. This is a life experience where you need people to hold things with you. And that includes also the joyous part of life, the celebration of our endeavors when we have accomplished something, to be recognized for all the sacrifice that we have put into something we want to achieve or accomplish. I think, especially as Hmong people, we have a lot to do celebrations. We have so much effort
Sure do.
around funerals, around like hardships,
So
around
much,
mediations, but
right?
little for like, celebrations in our lives. And so I want to encourage us to continue celebrating. I think it is so important to recognize that joy is an essential part of our journey.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I just want to add to what Seng was talking about too, as well, for anyone who's going through this experience, who feels lonely. If you do have trauma, abuse, and neglect, we will encourage mental health services too as well, which is going to help individuals deal with that. And I'm a natural book reader, so I encourage you all to get books on the topics. There are books for almost every issue, idea that's in the world right now, or use the internet. So Seng, we would love to hear your Saying we would love to hear a statement that kind of wraps up our conversation today regarding your letter dedication. Is there a quote or something, some message that you want to pass to them? And this is you sharing directly. Look at the camera. You tell them as if you're talking to them.
Even before I get to that, you just inspired a thought.
Tell me
About, that yearning for connection and community that sometimes may not be present in people's physical realm. But, I think this is the beauty about the age we're in, that digital community exists, that if you can't find it in the
physical
environment around you, the digital space has been such a powerful one to find people across the world who relate, who understand, who can share about the things that be relatable about what you're also going through. And that has been true for me too. I remember when I was going through my phase of reclaiming who I am, Tumblr, I don't know if it still exists, was a big platform that I found many people. And then they moved to Instagram. And then, also I got to then gradually build in real life, in the physical space of my surroundings, relationships with people. So I want to hold as just as valid that digital relationships are so powerful and can keep us afloat when we feel like there's no one in our physical life to do that with. And now to this part about maybe leaving a closing message and a quote rather. I had a mentor, or maybe I'd rather just say a guide who I needed at this point in my life. Her name is Charlotte Wynn. She's based in, I think, Los Angeles on the West Coast. And she shares something just so simple, but it was so deep for me, that went along the lines about my greatest gift to humanity is the quality of my inner world. And what that meant to me is that when you do the work, when you do healing, when you can raise the vibrations of the frequency about who you are, what your purpose is here, and your discernment to know what that is, you will exude and you will bring forth so much of the goodness about who you are, and infuse that into the environments, the rooms you even step into. That those are the things that build our self-confidence, that make people know that we have a conviction, we have a sense of dignity about who we are, and a truth that we have to share, and it's undeniable. And so for me, I leave that the quality of our inner world is some of our greatest gift to humanity.
That's beautiful. Wow, that's so powerful, because that got to me too as well. It makes me think of a quote saying that it makes me think of a quote that a rising tide raises all ships. So I think that's very powerful. Yours is from the internal, external. Mine is just overall benefit, which I really like this. I'm saying I actually would like you to answer a similar question for LGBT youth who are struggling to come out or dealing with their identity.
Yeah.
Wait, sis.
Wait, I thought there was like two parts about youth and then people in my own life.
Sorry. Let me repeat. So this part is similar to the quote that you just did, kind of your dedication, but I would like you to phrase it to individuals who are struggling with identity and struggling to talk about it, to share.
I want to dedicate this part to Hmong LGBTQ folks who are still coming into their own or finding who they are, and especially to youth, that you are so exquisite and wonderful as who you are, and in the journey about exploring who you are. If you feel like you're having trouble finding it, there are people, again, that are looking to want to care and love on you. And that we're out here. We're doing work and we're doing really great things to make sure that our imprint, our existence, we matter. We're here, and that you matter, and that you're going to be here. And just know that you can be all of these things at once. You don't have to choose one thing or another to feel like you have to fit into a neat box to appease someone else's idea about who you should be. And surround yourself with a community that is going to teach you, care about you, and also challenge you to grow. I think we need people who are going to push us to really think about what is our higher selves, what is our best selves. In order to do that, we have to also be challenging, critical, in loving and caring ways, of course, to really develop those parts of ourselves, because I think we all have a great purpose here on earth. That's why I think we're brought into this life, into this earth. It may have taken me a while, but I found it, and I'm here with you. I want you to know that your timing is perfect too, even if you feel like it takes a little bit longer.
Well said, Seng. Well, listeners, you all had a chance to listen to wonderful Seng talk about his love for arts, love for identity, the healing component, uplifting the next generation, and just sharing your story of your own experience of identity, of patriarchy, of trauma, and so forth. Seng, I think this story is gonna really connect with folks. So Seng, if people wanted to reach out to you and so forth, how can they find you? What is your social media handles?
I'm on Instagram. You can find me at seng.xo.
And Seng, if you want to post any pictures of you in drag, and then I'll post a link to get a hold of Seng's Instagram too as well. That'd be cool.
Hey, clarification. I actually have not done drag yet, but I have done gender bending stuff, like the stuff that you saw at the fashion show. So
that's what I want to see. Sorry, I thought that was considered drag. So gender bending.
Yeah.
I need to be educated now.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram there. And I just also want to say, sorry, Ochana, for having me onto your show. I appreciate you sharing this space with me. I think it's such a beautiful message that you're helping to share with, people in our lives, our community, in our fields of work, and it is an important one. So thank you so much.
就一条就是一个段 OK 听到吗？拜拜。
拜拜。
Thank you for joining us on Letters to My Podcast inaugural Season 1. We hope you can hear the power of storytelling, vulnerability, and self-expression rooted in the Hmong tradition. Let's continue to bridge the digital divide. I am Sai's niece. My name is Emma, and he is my uncle. He has helped me become more confident and made me come out of my comfort zone. I remember one day he took us nieces out to Dairy Queen. We decided to race back to the car, but my sister ran too fast and slipped under the car. It was memorable because it was funny, and those moments are something I would cherish forever. Letters to My Podcast is where vulnerability meets self-discovery. Self-discovery meets writing. Journaling, writing letters, or handwriting isn't just about writing what is on your mind or reliving your experiences. It is a medium for self-expression and self-reflection. Take a pause and time to think. For Sai, it began with journaling in college, a practice that became a lifeline. He poured his fears, tears, failures, successes, self-doubt, and inspiring quotes on index cards. At one point, he had over 300 index cards in a shoebox. Writing helped him discover a powerful path to self-awareness, increasing his mental well-being and assisting in processing his emotions. As a social worker, a pen and paper were his constant companion, helping him process interactions and to not miss anything important. Sai has benefited from the power of writing and wants to revitalize this practice and share it with you all. A little bit more about my uncle, who is the host. Sai, he, him, his, is a first-generation Hmong American man. social worker, and community organizer with over 12 years of experience. Sai is diagnosed with ADHD. He is passionate about building community through storytelling, self-expression, and the importance of affinity with their human counterpart. Sai believes each generation builds upon the next and seeks to uplift the next generation. One quote that embodies Letters to My podcast: "Our children are the greatest hope we have. The future belongs to them." Nelson Mandela, South African revolutionary. Letters to My podcast focuses on passing wisdom and uplifting the next generation. It is our turn to pass the torch of wisdom and leave the world a better place than we found it. Let us impart our hopes, dreams, and future to the next generation. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and give a 5-star rating to help with the algorithm. Letters to My podcast is on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Disclaimer: Sai Yang, LMSW, is not establishing a therapist-client relationship with listeners through this podcast, and any reliance on the content is at your own risk. The views expressed in this podcast are Sai Yang's personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employer or licensing board. For any mental health concerns or questions, please seek guidance from a licensed mental health professional or call text the National Suicide Hotline 988. Thanks for listening to Letters That Speak, Stories That Heal. Sai's niece Emma, outro done. Oh ciao.